We're live.
It's time for Inside BBI with John and Eric live. All right, well, welcome back to another edition of Inside BBI with John and Eric live. It is a Monday night after an interesting weekend of a lot of stuff, to be quite honest. But Eric, we are back, and I know I've got something to drink this time because we recorded it on Saturday in the morning. There was no beer at 9 o'clock in the morning, but I do have a Two Blokes Wicked Throat Charmer IPA. I went with this one, so there you go. It's pretty tasty. Yeah, it's fancy.
Yeah, I've got a fancy one. My wife picked up something Belgian Abbey style blonde ale. Abbe de Vauclair. My French is terrible, so nice. I got something very fancy with a monk on it. So
nice. Well, in honor of France, you have a white flag hanging on the wall over there.
Yes, yes.
If we get invaded, we could just start waving that flag. Anyway.
The French get a bad rap. French get anyway. We won't get into
anyway,
All right.
That was just being humorous. Just kidding.
Don't get mad at us if there are any friends. We know we had somebody from Italy watching us, so we have an international audience.
That is true. We did indeed. So we are back. We are live, and we're going to do a wide receiver breakdown. We kind of touched on a lot of it on the OTA piece, but we're going to break down just the wide receivers themselves. Let's go through the whole group, and then we want to do questions too. Chat. This will go either a full hour or who knows, maybe it's 45 minutes. We're like, you know what? There we go. It's a wrap. But we're going to play it by ear. But that being said, Eric, the OTA video is done really well. Actually,
I was shocked. It's like, whoa, it gets over 2,000 views.
We both agree. We should have done it sooner. A lot of stuff was going on. I was bouncing back and forth between South Carolina, Vermont, and Maine for graduations and stuff. So I was all over the place. We have a lot going on. But that being said, I'll say this. I did a clip. I took one of the clips where we were talking about Daniel Jones, and I cut it down even further. It was a short, and I cut it down even further, just specifically about, and I'm saying you, but we're both on the same page. I'm not setting Eric up as you're the bad guy, and I'm not. We're on the same page. Where we basically teed up the receivers, Slayton, which I saw a video today of his specific press conference piece, the things that he's talking about a catchable ball, Wan'Dale Robinson saying the same thing, and just how they noticed the difference. I put that clip up. I am shocked, Eric. We had a number of comments that really kind of went back at us about being mean to Daniel Jones, that it's the Giants.
Where?
In comments on the short video.
I saw one. Was there more?
No, there's more. There's more. Oh. It was a cheap shot. Well, I think one said it's a cheap way of getting back at Daniel Jones. I'm like, were you not watching for 6 years? Like, what happened? Is this like stock?
We're being mean.
We're being mean. We are being mean for pointing that out.
All right. Look, I defended Daniel Jones for a number of years, saying you had to give him time. The Giants gave him time, gave him way more time than is normal now, and he didn't. And look, you may think we're mean, but the Giants are being mean too, because they have been saying everything but coming out and saying we had a quarterback problem. So
right.
If you listen to all their commentary since the end of the year, general manager, the head coach, and now some of the players, they won't say Daniel Jones, but they will say things like, we notice things are different now, or we know we had a problem and now we fixed the problem. And I've actually been very surprised at the honesty with Shane and Dave. Now, you may not agree with Shane and Dable either, but they've basically been saying, and their actions have spoken even louder than their words. They brought everybody back but Daniel Jones. Everybody's back. They basically said, Daniel, now they may be wrong. If Daniel Jones, if what are we calling him now? Indiana Jones lights it up with the Colts.
I always said
the Giant. If he pulls another Barkley here, then everyone's going to be eating crow. But look, I've been watching football since my teens, and I'm an old man now. I know what quarterbacks are supposed to look like. They're not supposed to look like Daniel Jones. I'm sorry. If you don't like that, And they're learning. The players are learning that. And Slayton is the homer of homers for Daniel Jones. Go watch his press conference last week, and you tell me what the message is there, because Johnny had just showed a clip too. He's not dissing Daniel Jones, but he's saying there's a difference. There's a new sheriff in town, and there's a difference.
Yeah,
and quarterback who's at the end of his career. We're not talking about Russell Wilson from 10 years ago. We're talking about Russell Wilson who's got a year left or 2 years left. So sorry.
You can't mistake or project other stuff into what Slayton said. If you just literally listen to what he said, he didn't go, Daniel Jones is bad. He said what was really different about Russell Wilson. Those two things, when you look at it, are basically the same thing. It's kind of like passive resistance. You're not saying no, you just don't do it. In this case, he's not saying Daniel Jones sucks. He just said, man, it's a lot better. We can catch the ball. It's where he's. And he also said the key point to this: there are plays where sometimes you're supposed to run out where the play is not designed to go to you. But there are times where, depending on what happens, the ball might go to you. When they were doing it before, they knew the ball was never coming to them. The ball was going to go wherever it was going to go short. It wasn't coming to them. And after a while, it gets harder and harder to just run those routes when you know it ain't happening. Now you can't do that. That was Slayton's big thing. He goes, that ball might come to you. Russell Wilson's telling him it might come to you.
You're being very diplomatic here. He said, for all intents and purposes, the rest of the receivers knew in many situations that he wouldn't even look at them. So they knew were running their routes, and they knew there was no chance that he would throw the ball in their direction. And until Wilson told them, since he's been there, no, I may come back to you. You better still be running your routes. Darius Slayton, who's the biggest Daniel Jones homer, for all intents and purposes, said Daniel Jones won't even use 2 of the other receivers on the field, maybe more. So now the receivers are you think this wouldn't in the NFL, we're talking about the National Football League, are now, they think they might get the ball in any situation now. So you're being way too, you said it, everything you said was correct, John, but it's even worse than that. He's basically saying he's opened up the whole field now. Because he was saying, if coverage is a certain way, the ball actually may be coming to you. Don't assume I'm not throwing you the football. And Darius Slayton said, we knew in a lot of situations that we wouldn't be throwing the ball. And he kind of hinted at, didn't he kind of hint at that there are some guys that wouldn't be like him that might not even run their routes?
There was without a doubt. Without a doubt.
So again, it's in the back of my head. And again, this is.
Well, I think if you're going to go exactly, you're going to. I knew it.
Jalen Hyatt's going. So people have said, I've been to the games and you watch Jalen Hyatt and he's not even running routes. Well, Jalen Hyatt knows the ball and probably knows the ball's not coming to him in these situations. So and Darius was saying, some people like me, even though I know I'm not going to get the ball, I'm still running my routes full speed. So it was really really bad.
If you think about, again, we don't want to put too much on one small snippet of things that are being said overall. But if you really think it through, right? Football is not a game of just the court, any play, any position. But for now, we're talking quarterback. The quarterback takes a snap, he just drops back and he throws to the guy that the play was designed to, and that's it. And nothing else that happens on the field has any impact. That's all. Everything impacts what happens in the game. Imagine if, you are more of a, I don't mean to say this in a negative way, you're more of a Jalen Hyatt defender than I am.
Yes.
And I think that's fair to say.
I'm just simply saying we don't have the full story on him.
Exactly. I'm giving you a little bit of credit here. Yeah. So I have been more harsh about Hyatt than you have. You've been like, well, let's see. And, we got this. If you think about it, right? If you put Jalen Hyatt on the field And part of what you want from him, because he doesn't have a huge tree of route possibilities, is to take the top off, right? I want you running down the field. I need to pull the defense back. The ball, if they don't, you might be open. But after a while, right, here's Jalen Hyatt. We know he's got a little bit of okay, we think he has a little bit of an attitude about what he thinks he is versus what maybe other people think he is. And if he's not getting the ball, you could see where he might pout. So if you're busting past people and you're busting past people and the ball never comes to you, after a while, and that's your only job, by the way, after a while, when you get on the field, you don't run as hard. So you're not getting open. The coaches are watching you. They know Jones didn't throw the ball, but they can only blame so much there because you didn't run your route. If you let people not run their route, then you're letting you basically told everybody else they don't have to run a route. It becomes a cascading effect and you start doing it. So now you're tipping players off. So you gotta jog out there, Jalen Hyatt, who knows I'm gonna go down the field. He's gonna throw it over there to Wan'Dale, but I'm just gonna run. But now I'm not really even trying. I'm not getting open. It just affects everything else. And again, we're projecting, we're not in the locker room, we're not on the field, we don't know that. But Glenn Parker, in an interview with him, he said something when we talked about in the Super Bowl, well, all of a sudden we became me and guys were kind of just doing when adversity started to hit. The Giants don't have a history of success in the last 10, 12 years. And when you've got a bunch of guys on the team that are used to losing, and there's a lot of them that are,
right.
Negative things quickly become it's like that muscle memory thing. Okay, here we go. This is kind of what, and now effort can easily wane. I think Russell Wilson's presence alone, again, I don't want to make it like we got Dan Marino in his third year, but that's how far down we were to where we are, that a competent quarterback and one who brings gravitas, right? He brings a legitimate, I've won a Super Bowl, I've led teams, and he's good about bringing people together, which is something not all Aaron Rodgers is not that guy. Aaron Rodgers doesn't bring everybody. He brings his guys together. He doesn't always mesh with other people. That's been obvious in Green Bay. Right. It certainly was obvious with the Jets. Russell Wilson goes out of his way to bring people together. This is a big deal. What they're saying really starts to play into what we saw. We saw it against Dallas in a game at home where Nabers was wide open and Jones was late getting him the ball. He makes the catch. He gets about 30 yards thereabouts. That could have been a 65-yard play if Jones hit him earlier. The Jalen Hyatt play against Arizona, go back a couple of years, down the field, he's wide open. Jones hits him. But if Jones had led him just before, as he's breaking, that's a touchdown.
A touchdown. Yeah.
So this is what might be different, and this is where I think you're going to see Jalen Hyatt's either he's going to succeed or he's going to fail, but it might not be the lagging attitude. It's now just going to be whether he can physically do it.
And so people might be going, Jesus Christ, why are we talking about Daniel Jones again? So we're going to be talking about the wide receivers. I think what John wants to do, and I know I want to do here, is the wide receivers can only do what based on the quality of the quarterbacking. So we're going to, what have I said for months? I want to see our wide receivers with a different quarterback. Well, now we're going to see our wide receivers with a different quarterback. And everything you said was correct. I would just add what I've said before. Russell Wilson, and again, I'm not a big Russell Wilson guy, remember.
Sure.
I wasn't one of these guys that said, oh, we got to get Russell Wilson. But he will bring a calming presence in the huddle when the crowd is going nuts on opening day in Washington. And remember that what fan base is going to be fired up. They expect to beat the Giants. The crowd's going to be going crazy. And Russell Wilson in the huddle will calm everybody down, because this game is nothing compared to the games that he's played in before. This is another opening day to him. This isn't the playoffs. He's been to the playoffs. How many playoff games has he played in? Probably like 15 or something. I'd have to look it up. But how many Monday night games? How many Thursday night games is he?
I was told there'd be no math.
He will be calm, and he in itself will be a thing. So I'm excited about. Look, if Jalen Hyatt can't do it with Russell Wilson, he's not going to do it, because Russell Wilson is the perfect quarterback for Jalen Hyatt. He's going to throw outside to him deep. And if Russell Wilson can't, if Jalen Hyatt can't do it with Russell Wilson, then anyway. So Do you want to start with receivers? Should we do this, or should we start with questions, or how do you want to handle this?
I kind of feel like at the moment we're kind of on we're rolling with it. It
Okay.
all plays together. So I think we can continue and I'll keep an eye on questions and stuff. But I think we can continue the receivers and let's go ahead and continue that way. And if we have questions that take us elsewhere, we'll do that. This is kind of a free for all the way we're going to do this.
Right.
So let's start at the top. We've got the guy we know who's
Malik.
going to be the guy, but we have concerns, and you brought it up. So let's start with Nabers. Let's start where
hope the toe's okay. I just hope the toe's okay. That's the only concern right now. What is this toe injury that's been there since college that is still lingering without surgery on June 16th? So again, I know they're probably being careful. I'm a little bit nervous about that because I've seen Giants stuff before where they don't need surgery, and all of a sudden we find out they're having surgery in August, and we're like, what the hell? So if he's fine, Malik Nabers, that's what I said to you the other day. If you start to look at the Giants roster, there are some really good players on this roster. That's why if the Giants have a quarterback, this team can surprise people. Don't you feel that way?
I think so.
I mean, on defense, especially, we have a lot of name players on defense now, and we're starting to get very interesting players on offense. It's not the offensive line isn't where I want it to be, but and you can argue we need another really, really good wide receiver, but and we'll get into that. That's how good are our wide receivers? But Malik Nabers is arguably a top 10 wide receiver right now, right?
Agreed. I would think so. The concern again, and how much better would he have been?
Yep.
Had we had a decent quarterback and who wouldn't. And by the way, he took a pounding.
Yep.
He for a guy coming out of college who was used to being like wide open and stuff, he got beat up a lot. Jones put him in really bad positions a number of times.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking this guy is top tier with a really good quarterback, and I believe Wilson is that guy. I'm concerned about the toe, but you think the Giants are like they don't seem surprised at this at all. And that's a little concerning to me because you didn't even bring it up at the end of the year.
Right. Well, what's this thing all of a sudden? Well, it's been a problem since college. Wasn't that new to you?
That was very new because you had other issues.
Unless I missed something, I was like, what do you mean this has been a problem? And if he was a problem since college, why was he? And again, I know the Pro Bowl isn't the Pro Bowl like it was, but he was still running around and having fun. He should have been not going to that stupid affair. I don't even watch that anymore. But you saw him, whatever they run, this flag football crap that they run basically at the Pro Bowl. So maybe they're being really careful. I just don't like we're 6 months after the season and he's still not doing anything, and it just makes me a little bit. I don't want to dwell on this. I don't want to get people worked up and nervous. It's just I don't like it. If he's healthy, if he stays healthy, he put up big numbers with shitty quarterbacks, and now he's going to have a quarterback that's going to go to the Hall of Fame someday. He's not a Hall of Fame quarterback now, but he's going to go to the Hall of Fame. He knows what he's doing, and I'm actually excited to see him catch the ball down the field, not these 8-yard catches where he gets creamed and where he gets the ball 10 times a game and he's still he's getting 100 yards. I want to see him 2 or 3 deep shots to him down the field for a 50-yard touchdown. I want to see that because he can do that. They just didn't use him that way or they tried to. There were times, right, John? There were times last year where you saw Nabers pretty frustrated coming back to the huddle.
Absolutely. One second, I'm going to do something really bad here. I don't normally do this. Can you shut that off for me right there? Just shut it off. Take it right downstairs with you. Just FYI, I was trying to do one of those dual camera things, so I was recording our thing, and all of a sudden, the mic on the recording started to pick up everything and play it back. So I don't know if you could hear
no
other feedback.
You're going all Hollywood on us now.
I'm trying to get better with some of this. Anyway,
no.
That being said, my big thing, I don't know. I don't even know what the hell you were saying when I right there. I was like so worried.
Go. That's a great point.
I was worried about Yeah, I just didn't want to. I didn't want to like echoing in the background. I'm concerned of one thing with Neighbors in that um, a lot of wear and tear happened last year very early, and it affected him. Even though you look at his numbers, you think that's great, but one thing I've said this before. I said it a long time ago,
Hmm.
years ago, when the Giants. I believe it was the 2014 season. And there were so many people that were focused on, well, the Giants offense did this and it was the
Hmm.
defense. And I'm like, never take stats or a grouping in a season in which you were a losing team and equate that to be that this was good and this part was bad. And I think that's what the Giants did a lot. The problem is when you put up stats in a bad season, who gives a shit? Lots of times you're playing from behind.
Hmm.
You're just you're getting all this extra stuff. I want to see Neighbors though for a full season. I don't want him catching 115, 120 passes though. I want him more of them down the field, like you said. I want him attacking. I want him more Jamar Chase. I don't
Hmm.
want him having to take. I don't want him to be Anquan Bolden and getting just for those who remember Anquan Bolden getting absolutely beat up. He would catch 110, 115 passes, but get pummeled. And his career was very short. It was for a while he was and then it just dropped. We want Neighbors to be long term. He's got to be a down the field attacky kind of guy. So Wilson, I think, will bring that out. That toe thing is concerning because
And
those
Dart
could.
and Dart will. Dart's
Oh,
not.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Well,
Dart
yeah, I was
too.
trying to lean away from the quarterbacks, but yes,
Yeah.
Dart too down the road. But those toe things can be really scary because they can be very easily
Oh
just
yeah.
recurring out of nowhere. Hits a toe, and remember, he didn't practice much on Friday's period, and I'm beginning to wonder now looking back on it, was some of this the toe and they just weren't telling people and they would say it was something else and they
That's
would
what I
give him the
wondered
time
too.
off.
I wondered too. And remember the other thing too is what do we play on? Stupid turf.
Right, right.
Is this turf toe? And if it is turf toe, the
Oof.
turf's still there. So Giants, get rid of the goddamn turf. All right. I'm supposed to stop swearing. Remember we were told I was swearing too much. All right.
Just
Sorry.
well, not the swearing, just the specific.
Specific.
I think
Okay.
it's I don't know where the
PD.
line's drawn.
Sorry. I drink every time I swear.
Oh crap. Well,
Um,
that'll send us in a different
all right.
direction.
So let's back up. Malik Nabers, you said it. You said a name. Jamar Chase.
Yes.
Can he be Jamar Chase?
I believe so.
I do too, which is pretty high praise.
Yeah,
I
he
think.
has a similar style. You know what
Yes.
I mean? That he can burst, he can make moves.
Yep.
He's not. You just don't want him catching a lot of short over the middle where he's facing the quarterback. You want him so he can move and take advantage of his skills. You don't want his back to the defense when he's catching the ball because that's when you take those shots in the upper back, the lower in the ribs, those kind of things from behind. That'll really start to get you to bring your arms down when
Right.
that happens, and we don't want that. So yeah, I think it could be Jamar Chase. I think it'd be he's a Justin Jefferson. He's a Jamar Chase. He comes from the same kind of school. He comes from the same school.
Yeah.
But I mean, this came the same sort of school of play. He comes from that same thing. He's a guy that is designed to be a greyhound. And the Giants were kind of using him as a greyhound, but like more like a greyhound bus, not a greyhound dog. And so I want to see him dog. Here's Dayball's dog. I want to see him more downfield. I want to see him catching more downfield. And I think he can be. I mean, it's high praise, yes, but you know, is he any different than those other guys when they came out?
I don't
That is
think so.
true, but
No, it's a good point. It's a good point. But that doesn't take away the fact that he can be that player. This is a really good point. I'll bring it up again. It's a really good point, Dave. And that's why I've talked before in previous episodes and with John. And we're going to find out how good really or how bad are the other wide receivers on this roster. Are they better than we think they are because of the quarterback play, or are they who they are? So we're going to find a lot more about Slayton. We're going to find a lot more about Wan'Dale Robinson, Jalen Hyatt. So it would be nice to have another T. Higgins on this team, but we don't have to have T. Higgins. We have to have somebody better than what Darius has been to date, what Wan'Dale's been to date, and maybe that'll come out with the quarterbacks. So we'll see. That's a really good point, but that doesn't change the fact that Neighbors has the ability to be he is a Pro Bowl caliber wide receiver who can be a difference maker, who scares the other team. You put your best cornerback on him and he still can beat the guy. And other teams are going to have to double him. So I think when the Giants play other teams, Malik Nabers will be doubled by almost every opponent that we face. And that will open up other opportunities for other people. Now, if Slayton and Wan'Dale and Hyatt and whoever else makes this team can't take advantage of that, we're going into the 2026 offseason and free agency in the draft with wide receiver being one of our top needs. And they'll have the money. They'll have the money, and they have the draft capital to get that. So I still think wide receiver and offensive line, surround Dart with people is the next step on this team going in the next offseason. But maybe that we have the wide receivers, but we'll have to see.
Well, that's interesting that you said that, because I actually was going to ask you that. It's a fair point. I know I was going to kind of go against it right off, but the point with the Bengals, though, is they really only have those two. They don't have a lot of others, and their tight ends are,
They got a pretty good quarterback too.
They do. That's the interesting part. Which we don't know how good can Slayton be when he is a producer down the field. The one part that he struggled with is he'll have drops, and he doesn't bring a lot of other stuff. But he's a darn good. Like, he's got speed. He's got more than decent speed.
Still,
he can get open.
He still does.
He can get open deep. And he's a little bit bigger too. He's a little bigger than you would think he is. I'm really curious on how Wan'Dale develops. So, so let's move off Nabers. Let's go straight to Wan'Dale. We'll go
one last point on Nabers. So, because you're going to hear this theme constantly from me, or constantly from me tonight. The big issue with Malik, to me, is cut down on the drops. And some of that's because he's had so many throws. So his drops are inflated because he's had so many targets too. But cut down on the drops. Slayton cut down on the drops. Hyatt cut down on the drops. Wan'Dale, did Wan'Dale have a big drop problem? Maybe. We had a lot of drops.
He was up there in drops.
We had like 60 drop passes as a team, which is way, way, way too high. So, all right. So let's move on.
What would be interesting on the drops too, though, is if you kind of made it like a plot sort of graph.
Mm-hmm.
How many of those drops were within 7 yards of the line of scrimmage? And then look at how many of the drops are like overly contested passes. Like you were 1-2 people right on you. There's going to be a lot. The Giants were throwing to guys that were covered and they were short. A lot of the passes were short. Again, don't want to beat
there
up
were
on
open ones too, though. Let's be honest.
There was plenty. There was plenty. I mean, listen, Nabers. We can talk about the kicker. We can talk about the fact that the Giants just couldn't stop the I was going to call them the Skins. Couldn't stop the Commanders from going down to kick field goals. We lose the game, but the fact of the matter is, Nabers drops a 4th down pass that he should have caught. Right. I mean, it was right in his hands. So drops are a big deal. You're absolutely right. So let's move to Wan'Dale. We'll go across the field. Wan'Dale in the slot. This is for a small guy. This is a huge year for him. This is a guy that the Giants are going to have to kind of make up their mind on what they're going to want to do with him on his contract going forward. If he doesn't produce this year, you're never going to produce if you don't produce this year.
Well, and it's cut off by our logo up here, but look at the 2026 contracts, and Wan'Dale is one of them. It's cut. You can't see it because it got cut off, but it's a contract year for Wan'Dale. It's a huge year for him. So there are a number, and I don't want to get too much into this because people are going to get crazy. I do, but there are a lot of interesting slot receivers in the next year's draft. A lot of really good slot receivers, and people have turned. It's interesting that the position is you either go with the small 50 guy, but the new trend now seems to be towards big slot receivers, which is what Little Jordan Humphrey is. I'm not saying Little Jordan's going to beat out Wan'Dale, but I'm saying that they're coming out of college, and we saw this in the last year's draft. There were a lot of big wide receivers that were just slot receivers that were drafted in the first 3 rounds, and it's going to be the same case this year. So Wan'Dale's got to prove he can be a dynamic player at all levels, not just the short catches that he breaks a tackle and picks up the first down, but he can get intermediate catches, but he also can get farther down the field. Again, we saw a little bit of this in the Colts game. So one of Wan'Dale's better games was the Colts game. There was the ball was going farther down the field with him. I think he can do that. The knock on him is what Cy has talked about is because of his short arms and his short period, he doesn't have a big catch radius. So the quarterback's got to be fairly accurate when throwing the ball to Wan'Dale. because he's not going to be reaching way out to snag the ball. You've got to get. But Wan'Dale is one of those guys. It's funny if you go back and read the game reviews with Wan'Dale. Cy is basically kind of all over the place with him. There's one game review where he'll say, "Oh man, Wan'Dale, this is the guy that he still can be a dynamic weapon. I really like what he brings to the team. He can really do a lot of damage." And then the following week, Cy's like way down on him, saying, "We need to get somebody who can be better than this." So I don't even think Cy's sort of like all over the place on Wan'Dale. Wan'Dale, to me, his career can still go in one of two directions. He can still be a way better player than he is right now, or he could basically just be what he is. And if he is what he is, I think we have to do better than that. So I think he could have a decent year for us. But if he's not, if we're having another year where he's just getting, what did he average this year? 6 yards a catch? It was something absurd. It was some absurd number. He had like the lowest yards per catch. And that's not all on him.
Definitely not.
It was, so we know Dabo likes to throw the ball. We know he likes using the slot guy. Wan'Dale had a ton. We talk about all the targets Malik Nabers got. Wan'Dale Robinson got thrown the ball a ton last year. I got to bring up the stats. Well,
he had 7.5 yards
and how many
per. He had 93 receptions.
Yeah, but so how many targets did he have? Do you have that right in front of you?
140.
That's huge. 140 targets. The Wan'Dale Robinson.
But that's
but he didn't have 1,000 yards, but he didn't have 1,000 yards.
No, he had 690. He had 699. But that's symptomatic of the way the Giants' passing offense was pathetic. Let's be honest. I mean, you can't look at the receivers and say that this is the receiver's fault, knowing the quarterback is throwing shit passes 5 yards from the line of scrimmage. Right. So, yes, 140 targets though is absurd. Like, I mean, it's just that's crazy. Yeah. That's crazy numbers. What you want to see is you want to see a high target, but what I want is a higher catch percentage. On less targets. Right.
So, but doesn't that number shock you? Because at the end of the year, when I was looking at the stats, it floored me that he got thrown the ball that much. I knew he got thrown the ball a lot. I didn't realize he got thrown the ball 140 times. I mean, that's Malik Nabers territory.
It's so bad for the Giants last year that something like that, it's got to be pretty close to like some sort of an epic number of targets for a guy who's not your number one player, by the way. He's not the number one wide receiver on the team. That's a humongous number, and yet it's not memorable. There's like we don't
it's not memorable. So the question is it a record in terms of the number? Is it a record in terms of the number of times a player's been thrown to for the fewest amount of yards in NFL history? And again, people are going to say, I'm knocking Wan'Dale, and I'm not, kind of am, but that's not my point here. My point here is for the times they threw to him, it's certainly the payoff wasn't there. And some of that was crazy crap that every New York Giants fan who actually watched games last year, you know what I'm talking about. It's 3rd and 7, and we threw a 4-yard pass to Wan'Dale, and you're like, why are we throwing a 4-yard pass on 3rd and 7? Yes, Wan'Dale can break tackles, but you're not going to make a living doing that every time it's 3rd and 7. And we saw it constantly. There was one game, I think Wan'Dale was averaging like 1 yard a catch, and he had 5 catches or something like that. It's like, what are we doing? So anyway, it was crazy.
But the interesting part about it, though, is he had 3 touchdowns last year. And I think I can really only remember one of any kind of importance. I'm like, he did? I'm like, 3? Yeah. The Giants, how many did we have as a team? 15?
Yeah.
I'm like, he had 1/5 of the touchdowns last year. It's kind of crazy.
I'm trying to bring up stats right now. My computer's acting up. So I'm going to have to rely on you for my stat guy right now.
So to Trainmaster, to answer your question, in 2007, Wes Welker had 145 targets and 112 receptions. And that's with Moss being on the other side of the field. So 112 receptions on 145 targets. But that's also, if you think about it, right? The Patriots of 2007, they were pass happy. They were not a running team. They threw the ball. They threw the ball a ton. So to have 145 targets and with Moss on the other side, that's a lot. There's no doubt
Right.
about it. But for Wan'Dale to have 140 targets on a Giants team that went 3 and out a lot, whose offense could not get much of anything, that's a ton of targets. But
Right.
those receptions, 93 of 140, Welker had 112 of 145. I mean,
Right.
you're talking almost 30 more receptions, almost 30 more receptions than what Wan'Dale had. That's crazy. It's just crazy.
So we got a 5'10" quarterback who has had troubles throwing over big guards, possibly throwing to a 5'8" wide receiver out of the slot. It will be interesting to see what Wan'Dale's year is going to be like. I was very pessimistic before the OTAs. In the OTAs, where it's a passing camp and there's no one's getting hit, they were throwing inside. So we'll see if that continues or not. But I think you and I have talked about before that there's a possibility that Wan'Dale's numbers will decline significantly in terms of pass attempts, simply because the quarterback change. So we'll see how this works out, because historically speaking, Russell Wilson, he will throw over the middle, but that's not his favorite or his best thing to do. And so you got 5'10" throwing to 5'8", and the question moving forward on all of this is, we're going to be watching Russell Wilson. What do these guys who are all really young still, what would they be doing if Jackson Dart was in the game? So is Wan'Dale Robinson a different player with Jackson Dart versus Russell Wilson? And we won't know that. The coaches will have to look at that in camp and judge that moving forward, because at the end of the year, Wan'Dale Robinson is going to be a free agent, and the Giants have to make a decision. Do we bring him back, or do we try to improve the position? And again, there are some guys we're going to talk about, and we should move on, because there's 14 wide receivers on this roster. There are some guys on this team that can play the slot and might be in the picture down the road too, even though we're focusing more on this upcoming year.
So there, in the chat, it was shared that Randy Moss had 160 targets in that same year. So
Mm-hmm.
you're talking 305 targets between the two. Wan'Dale was targeted 140 times.
That's insane.
Malik Nabers was targeted 170 times.
Right.
So,
both those
you're
numbers,
talking 310 targets from
guys.
those two guys.
Two guys. That's crazy. I mean, it's not. Look. I'm not saying it's something to be critical of. I'm just floored on an offense that can't score 15 points a game.
But it's another point that you made a little while ago, which was the drop pieces. And again, we don't know from what I'm going to share what was a drop and what was just a bad pass, and he didn't even get a hand on it. It was a target and it was incomplete. 170 targets for Nabers for 109 receptions. So that means 61 of his targets were incomplete.
Mm-hmm.
Those are things you want to bring. The 170, you want that down. You want that in the 140, 150 range. The receptions, you would want to go from 109 to about 120. You want those to go up. Those two things need to come up, but the plays down the field is what we were talking about. For Wan'Dale, and to then move on, I like to see the fact that he could be a little bit more of a gadget player. They can use him on end arounds. They could line him up and out of the backfield and run out a little bit more. You use him a little bit less as a strictly slot traditional receiver and move them around a little bit, make matchups much harder for them to get them in motion and get them outside, because that's where I think he'll take advantage. And again, not to put too much onto this particular thing, because whether it's Russell Wilson, whether it's Jameis Winston, or whether it's Jackson Dart, a quarterback that can throw the ball down the field makes defenses not come up so quickly, not be willing to jump up or pull the safeties or bring the linebackers up to take the stuff short, because you can't afford to give up the deep end. When you played the Giants last year, the deep end was the last thing that they worried about.
Well, and maybe I'm being naive here. Maybe I'm being too simplistic. I harped on all year, Daniel Jones would not throw the ball down the field. Throw the ball down the field. I get and again, this may be me being wrong about this. I get the feeling other defenses said, don't worry about Daniel throwing the ball down the field. He either won't or he can't, so don't worry about it. And even if he completes one, he's certainly not going to do it again. We're going to crowd the line. We're going to focus on Malik getting the catch, and we're going to pound the crap out of him, which we talked about in our last thing, and he did. Malik got the crap beat out of him. There's that one game we thought it was the Cowboy game, and I think it was the Cowboy game.
Yeah, it's either the Cowboy or the Bengal game. One of the two.
He got the crap beat out of him. At the end, he was like collapsing on the sidelines. So before we pass this, I'm glad you brought this up, John, because I saw this from Trainmaster earlier. This is a really great question. Again, I think this ties in with the quarterbacks. I think it ties in with what John was just talking about. So, John, when they drafted Wan'Dale, I thought they were going to use him more like what you just said, the gadgety kind of thing. That's what he did in college. He was running plays as a running back. They were spinning him out of the backfield, catching passes. They were moving him around like a gadget kind of thing, and he was very effective at that. And they've kind of gotten away from that. And again, is that because our coaches? Is that because of the quarterbacks? I don't know what it is. But we do have a lot of running backs who can catch the ball now. Our tight ends look like they're going to be better with experience and with new additions and all that. We'll talk a little bit, I guess, about that. But again, how's the ball going to be spread out around to all these guys? So we won't harp too much more on the number of attempts or targets that Wan'Dale and Malik got, but it's stunning. Over 300 on two players is just stunning. On a team quarterbacked by Daniel Jones and Drew Lock, and a little bit by Tommy DeVito. It's just stunning to me. I mean, we're not talking like Eli was back there or anything. I mean, it's Daniel effing Jones throwing the ball. So anyways, don't bring this up, Darren. That's when I was like, and the coaches were too. We're out. God. We're done.
Yeah, that one.
We're done.
Oh my God.
We're done.
But it's funny that we point to that, and again, not to beat the Daniel. I know this is going to seem like we're constantly beating
the corpse.
Jones,
what do you call him?
I did. I call him the corpse of Daniel Jones.
What did you call him?
Before that, he said he was the herpes of quarterbacks, and then
no.
that was a while back.
It wasn't the corpse. You called him the Anyways, you had some
cadaver. I don't know. It doesn't matter.
Right.
It doesn't matter.
Let's move on. Yeah.
But one of the things, though, that we look and we point to that one thing, right? The Carolina one, the flea flicker.
Yes.
That's not the one for me that stood out last year. It was earlier than that, and I brought it up multiple times. I brought it up tonight. It's early in the game against Dallas at home. They get everything they wanted. They sucker Dallas into thinking it's going to be a run play. Jones drops back. There's a pump fake, and Nabers is free.
Mm-hmm.
Go back and look at the highlight. He's free. He's running, and all of a sudden, he's turning around like this, waiting for the ball to come to him.
Mm-hmm.
He makes the catch. Now, at best, he turns, and he gets maybe about 10, 11 more yards.
Mm-hmm.
That is a 60-plus yard play if you throw and hit him. One other thing about the difference in how you throw a football, and again, I'm not a quarterback. I was a pitcher in high school in baseball, threw a football, but I wasn't a quarterback. We didn't have football, so we couldn't play football. However, we go back to the video we did after the Titans preseason game. No, not the Texans preseason game. One of the complaints I had was that pass that he was trying to get to Hyatt that got it was either knocked down or was intercepted. I can't remember which one it was on the deep fly. And I said, and Cy was on with us, I said Jones is very mechanical in how he tries to put it in. There was no arc on the ball. It was coming in too low. The defender had time to get to it because of the angle it was coming in at. Wilson throws the moon ball, right? You don't throw the moon ball when the guy's 50 yards down the field and then you throw it and he waits for it like a fair catch.
Right.
You throw the moon ball before they ever get there. The ball is coming down and it's leading. They're coming to it. That is an art which Wilson has. That's huge for guys like Hyatt. That's huge for Nabers. That is going to be huge for a guy like Slayton. Those kind of things, you throw it far before the guy gets there. Jones waited till guys were down the field before you throw the ball.
So let's talk about Slayton. So the big three on this team, we can talk about Hyatt all we want, but right now the big three are Nabers, Wan'Dale, and Slayton. And Hyatt may have a great summer, but he's not likely to beat anybody out unless he's like just dominates and takes Slayton's spot. So we're talking about these three. And Slayton is a guy in his rookie year caught 8 touchdown passes and looked like a real find. And for where we drafted him, he's had a heck of a career. Not great, but he's one of these guys that you're still waiting for him just to get 1,000 yards, do that 8 touchdown in a year again or better, and do it consistently and not disappear. My biggest problem with him is and we saw it again last year, is it the quarterback. He disappeared down the stretch. So I said it with everyone we were talking about. I want to see Slayton with a real quarterback, and if he can't put up big numbers with Russell Wilson, just like Jalen Hyatt, then it's time to think about replacing Slayton, even though we just got him a new contract.
Yeah.
So Slayton should have a really good year. I expect maybe a career year out of Slayton, given who his quarterback is this year, because I think Slayton is going to see a lot of deep passes like we saw his rookie year down the field. And I mentioned, for those who didn't see it, our last show, that we by the way, did you see it's like 2,100 views or whatever? A lot of views on our last show.
Yeah.
I think I watched a highlight tape of Slayton's touchdowns this week. And again, that's always dangerous when you're just watching, but the guy can get down the field. All these things were way down the field where he was blowing by the corner, or he was catching a shorter pass, spinning away from the guy and getting the touchdown. He can still run away from people. He's not an old guy. It seems like he's been here forever. He's really fast still. And so Slayton and Hyatt and Nabers should do exceptionally well with this quarterback. That's what I'm looking forward to. So I expect more targets going to Slayton, fewer going to Wan'Dale, and maybe fewer to Malik. I know you would like to see that. You'd like to see more yards per catch and him not get beat up as much. But I think Slayton might benefit as much as we're talking about Jalen Hyatt. Slayton may be the biggest benefactor here.
He could be. I want to temper it slightly because I'm looking through and there's a very interesting thing about this. Now, again, we had a shitty quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I get that. I can't say
you're being mean. Stop being mean.
Well, I can't say it for the first two guys and then get to Slayton and go, hey, wait a minute. But there is something about him that's very interesting. Do you know he's now been with us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years. 6 years he's been a wide receiver for us. He's only the most receptions he's had in a season is 50.
Right. No, and I brought that up constant. And the yards. Look at the yardage.
His yardage, the most he's ever had is 770.
Right. He's never really seriously challenged 1,000 yards.
But his targets have been relatively high compared to the catches.
Right.
84 in his rookie year to 48 receptions. 96 in 20 for 50 receptions. 58 in 21 for 26. 71 targets in 22 for 46. But his average was 15.7. That was his most in a season was that year.
So how many years has he played?
6 years.
Remind me who our quarterback was.
No, I know that, but that doesn't change the fact that
yes, it does.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't change the fact that he's pretty consistent. That he maxes out at 50 receptions.
And I've said that. So every year, at the end of every year, I go to the roster section of of the website, Big Blue Interactive. I go to the roster section, and there's a write up on every player. And so in January, I do a write up on how every player did at the end of the year. And every single year, Slayton, it's almost identical because is exactly what you just said. The stats are almost identical, and it's like that. He's been teasing, and we always look back to that 8 touchdown rookie. Because look at the touchdowns. It's 8 is rookie year, right? Now read off the next 5 touchdowns. Read off the next 5.
3, 2, 2, 4, 2.
Not good enough. Not good enough.
What worries me more, though, is he had 71 targets last year and 39 receptions.
Well, and if you could pull up on a game-by-game basis, he disappeared down the stretch last year. He had only like a couple of catches in the last few games, like 5 games last year. He just disappeared. And he's had a tendency to do this. So a lot of people have said this. And again, it sounds like I'm busting on Slayton. People say, Jalen Hyatt can't run routes and Jalen Hyatt can't get off press coverage, blah, 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 blah. Well, I think Slayton's got a problem against press coverage too. I want to see, if the Philadelphia Eagles get in his face, he's got to get off that coverage, get past the corner, and burn them deep. So earlier in chat, we had a really smart comment from somebody that the Bengals had T. Higgins. We need a compliment next. We need Slayton to make other teams pay when they double Nabers. So that's the challenge. Well, is he just a guy? And a lot of people think he is, and that might be the problem. And if he is, wait, keep that up. If he is just a guy, then we know what our number one or number two need is next offseason. It's going to be wide receiver. I still say it's going to be offensive line too, but it's going to be wide receiver and offensive line. So if he's just the guy, yeah. But what if Slayton has 10 catches this year and 1,100 yards? I don't think that's unrealistic with Wilson as quarterback.
I think I think Slayton, and then we'll move on to some of the other guys. I think Slayton is the Giants' fallback for next year. They signed him, but that's a contract they could walk away from if they ultimately wanted to. Wan'Dale's the guy right now playing for a contract. If he has a big year, they're going to re-sign him. They'll keep him because they'll be able to control it to a degree, and they'll spread the cost out. And he's young. He's young, and he brings them. Because I still think the guy on the other side, I think they're still looking for him. And some of the guys we're going to talk about that. Slayton's going to have a Slayton year. The question becomes, does Hyatt have a good enough year that they can project him to be Slayton? Or are we talking Hyatt's not good enough, Wan'Dale's not good.
Right.
Now that's two guys you got to replace.
Right.
And then Slayton's really a jag that you're keeping because he's on contract, and wide receiver becomes a huge need. When the Giants went in '87 and they went Ingram and Baker, and I'm trying to remember, I think they got Odessa Turner the same year. I think Turner was down even lower than that. But either way, that could become an unbelievably huge need if Wan'Dale and Hyatt do not develop. Slayton's a guy who's going to be there as a safety blanket next year, or this might be his last year, regardless of the contract.
What have you been, besides my reluctance to use technology? What is the other thing that you laughed at me about this pre-draft? What were you laughing at me about? Do you remember the use of the mock
oh my God, your simulator, which was awesome, especially when we called it the stimulator.
Did you know that you can do that? Can continue. You can still do that for 2026 now, and I've done that. And the reason why I'm doing that is I find myself drafting two wide receivers. I find myself drafting a slot receiver and a outside receiver, an X receiver, based on the fact that I'm just in case Slayton and Wan'Dale's leaves for your free agency and Slayton can't do it. So I'm just throwing, but like everybody else, I keep saying the same thing. I want to see these wide receivers with a real quarterback, and we're going to see it. Slayton's skill set is exactly the kind of receiver that Russell Wilson likes. Jalen Hyatt's skill set is just exactly what Russell Wilson likes. There's a reason why Russell Wilson has taken Hyatt under his wing, is because he knows it can be a mutually beneficial relationship for both. So we're going to learn a lot about everybody on this team this year. The good news is this: Daniel Jones is not here anymore. Everybody's out of excuses. Okay, everybody's out. So you can't blame Daniel now for 15 points a game. You can't blame him for the receivers getting 2 touchdowns in a season. What did Slayton have last year? 3 touchdowns, you said? 2? 3?
He had 2.
2. So
Wan'Dale had 3.
He's out of excuses. They're out of excuses. So if we have a show in January and those guys have 4 touchdowns between them, Slayton may be here next year, but he's not going to be starting. And Wan'Dale won't be back. So we're going to it's a big year for all of those guys. Nabers is a long-term, as long as he stays healthy. Nabers is here for the long term, but everybody else is playing for a job right now. We may have very different looking wide receiver group next year, or it might be the same guys based on what they do. So let's not lose sight of the fact of how huge a year this is for Slayton. And if the Giants are really going to surprise people this year, Slayton's got to have a really good year. And I'm somewhat optimistic about it because I think Slayton is a type of wide receiver Wilson loves, and we'll just go from there. But again, you got to cut down on the drops. You get down the field, you're wide open. You can't drop the ball. So
that's been, and I don't know if we need to talk about Hyatt.
No, we've beaten
because we've covered him. So
we got 4, but those are going to be 4.
Those are the 4. So
and how many do you think they're going to carry? 6 or 7, right? 6 or 7.
I think for now, I'm going to just answer the question and then I'll get into the what if later. I'm going to go with 6. I think it's 6 for a reason that we'll get to as we get through the players. I'll save it because we haven't covered everybody yet.
And Amir Smith-Marset is probably going to be one of the 6 or 7.
Oh, I would think it'd be shocking if he wasn't, because he is the kick returner.
There is no Gunner's gone. The Gunner O is gone. He's not on the team, so it's just Smith-Marset is the kick returner right now. And he seems to be a guy that they like, and they're throwing to him in camp. Jameis Winston's throwing to him all the time in camp or in OTAs right now. And I didn't think he was a receiver, but they're throwing to him. Even the Giants, the Giants huddle people are like, wow, they're really throwing to Smith-Marset a lot. So we're only talking about 1 or 2 spots being open on the 53. There's going to be 3 or 4. Maybe 2. Let's just say 3. There are going to be at least 3 spots open on the practice squad for wide receivers. So when we're talking about depth, we're talking about only if everyone stays healthy, we're talking about 1 or 2 spots open, right?
I would think so.
Right?
I would think so. So let's do. We've got 4. Let's go to 5 instead of going through everybody individually per se just yet. Let's kind of hit some of the guys we think might be in line for 5. 5 is different.
So you're counting Smith-Marset as your 6th wide receiver.
I'm assuming Smith-Marset's going to be there. So so really we're talking we're really talking one guy. Like we're talking one position. It might be more. They might go 7. I'm thinking right now, if you and some of this, it kind of depends. It depends on what happens with Wan'Dale, what they think they're going to use him for, and what they might want. I really think Zach Pascal has a straight line to make this team.
Really?
If he shows that he can, because he brings you that guy who's a little bit more across the middle. He can be that physical guy. It's a big deal. Thank you too for the super chat. Appreciate it.
Oh,
I really appreciate that. I want to see what you think, because he's a guy who's played in this league. He's done stuff. He brings special teams ability. He can catch. And he brings a physical presence. Look at the size that we're talking about, a 6'2", 215-pound wide receiver. He gives a little more bulk that the Giants don't have with some of their other guys who can legitimately play wide receiver.
I'm going to preface my remarks by saying I do a thing that a lot of fans, if not most fans, do. I develop favorites based on nothing else than just gut feeling. And I don't know why, but Zach isn't one of the guys that I was thinking that was going to be in the picture. And it's just because he's been around the league so long, and he's been just a guy that when I see other guys making plays in the OTAs, I'm hoping that carries into the training camp and then into the preseason. And I'm hoping that one of the younger rookie free agents becomes so interesting. So he makes enough splash plays. You think we cannot put him on the practice squad. Somebody's going to grab him. So that being said, Zach certainly has an advantage in given his experience. He's been in the league a long time. Like you said, he brings size to the table. I want to work a little bit backwards here. I don't think Bryce Ford Wheaton is in a good situation here, because he has not made, as far as we know, no one's been talking about him in OTAs. The Giants employees haven't been talking about him. The media people that have seen the 3 practices haven't been talking about him. He's a good gunner, but they drafted a guy, Corey Black, who's a really good gunner. So I think Bryce Ford Wheaton, there goes your size wide receiver. And what you've talked about is having some flexibility, a different kind of wide receiver room, having at least somebody who brings some size to the table. Zach certainly does that, so I wouldn't completely discount him. I'm just more interested in some of these other guys than Zach. But again, it's me. It's my subjective. You know what I'm saying?
It's legit. It's legit though. Okay, so Bryce Ford Wheaton. The thing about him, right? What is the one thing he's done? He returned a block field goal for a touchdown. He didn't block it. He returned it.
Well, he's a gunner. His best thing is he's been a gunner.
I understand that.
Yeah.
But he got injured.
Right.
And that cost him a whole season.
Right.
So he's a guy that doesn't have a lot. He has little to no offensive experience with the Giants. He hasn't done anything on offense. He's played specials, but he gives you nothing else. And what did we talk about in the previous video, the OTA video? Position versatility, the ability to be used for other stuff. One of the reasons why I think Wan'Dale brings a whole lot to the table right now is I think the Giants can throw him in the backfield if they want to, and they could start running patterns out of the backfield. And he gives you that. He could run the ball if they wanted to. They could run a couple of handoffs to him if they wanted to get tricky and do stuff
He's
like
done
that.
that. He's done that in college.
Bryce Ford Wheaton doesn't bring you anything else. He's literally just a gunner. He's not really going to play. You can't put him in the slot. Yes, he's a bigger guy, but he's shown no real ability at wide receiver that we've seen. So that's why I'm thinking he. Now the thing about Pascal, and I am being biased on the fact that he's played in the league, and he has some size.
That's an asset, though.
But he is 31.
Right.
So I mean, if you want to go younger,
and just so if anyone wants to correct these ages, by the way, the ages I put in there because I don't have a program to do this. These are the ages of the players as of December 31st, 2026. So Pascal actually may be 30. So just so you know that too, John. I don't have it.
That's fine. Yeah, I got you.
Okay.
And that's a fair, Neil, that's a fair point on Tyree. But I'll say this. Tyree was a demon on special teams. Bryce Ford Wheaton is just a guy on special teams. He's not a guy that we go, man, that guy is one of our leaders on special teams. He's just one of the guys on special teams.
I don't remember Bryce Ford Wheaton other than
doing anything.
Picking up the blocked kick. I don't remember him making any. I mean, maybe because I just don't remember. I don't think he's a bad gunner. I'm just saying if somebody else can be the gunner, what does Bryce Ford Wheaton bring to the table? That's
right. You got to be able to do something else.
Bryce Ford Wheaton was signed as a UDFA because he was big and he runs really fast and he's a really good athlete and he just hasn't developed yet. Can he still make the team? Yes. But he's been very quiet in OTAs. And whatever you want to say, the Giants do release these things where they say, this receiver Antoine Wells caught a touchdown pass and Jalen Hyatt caught a 50-yard pass and Jordan Bly caught 3 touchdowns. I haven't seen Bryce Ford Wheaton's name mentioned in 9 OTAs. So, which is a passing camp. So I just don't think that's a good sign for him. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm trying to say, Bryce, you're on the hot seat right now because.
And I think that's a fair point that Dave Del Cole, thank you for dropping in, by the way, bud. I think it's a fair point of what he made. Bryce Ford Wheaton still, all the talk about him and he still makes a team. But I will say the Giants, they were constantly trying to play around with the special teams piece. And if you can get a guy playing special teams that can also play offense, that opens the door. One of the big things, and we talked about in the OTA video, if you haven't seen it, watch that video. One of the things we talked about is the numbers at offensive line, the numbers maybe at defensive back or linebacker are really going to be dependent on some of the other positions where if you've got guys that can do multiple things, I don't necessarily have to just have a guy who only does one thing in that position group, taking a position away from another group that I really would like to have more depth at.
Mm-hmm.
I think wide receiver is one of those ones that the Giants don't need to have that many. And now I'm kind of going to go against my own point to a degree. I'm looking for size, but the Giants might be looking at their tight ends going, nah, our size will come from the tight ends. They're going to be the receiving group in the middle. And we could go 4 deep at tight end, which we've already covered the group. And that might mean it doesn't matter whether or not you're 6'2", 6'3", or whether you're 6 feet or 5'11". We just want a guy that's going to get open and pick up first downs.
And, somebody we're not talking enough about, but he also hasn't been making a lot of noise in OTAs either, is little Jordan Humphrey. I just love that name, by the way. So I don't know where parents get these names now, but little Jordan isn't so little. He's 6'4", He's 225 pounds. He's a slot wide receiver. That's the thing. There's that big slot that I was talking about. And
Boy,
he came in from,
don't slip up on that.
and he was a very good blocker. And if you have a good blocker as a slot receiver, that's huge. So they come down and they take out the linebackers, and he can do that because linebackers aren't big in today's. There's no Harry Carson's roaming middle linebacker today.
Right.
Little Jordan Humphrey is as big as the middle linebackers he's going to be facing, and his head coach and his last team loved him. Now he's gone because he's just a guy. But if you want, he's a guy that I won't completely discount because of the blocking. You got to have a backup in case Wan'Dale gets hurt. So is it going to be a Jordan Humphrey or little Jordan Humphrey, or is it going to be Jordan Bly? Now, Jordan Bly was a UDFA that nobody talked about when they signed him for good reason because he didn't do that much in college. He did really well in an all-star game. And he caught 3 touchdowns in one practice already this spring, and has had another number of other good days. And he's the guy you and I talked about when they were on inside. What is it? Big Blue Kickoff Live, or is it Inside Huddle with the Giant? I forget what it is. The one that Datino and
it should be Big Blue Kickoff.
Well, whatever the show was, it was Matt Sytak and it was Paul Datino. And I'm repeating myself, but some people might not have heard this. They were giving their breakdown of what had happened in the OTA that the media hadn't seen. And Matt Sytak started to say, oh, and there was this, and Jordan Bly and did really, really well. And then Paul Datino goes, we're not supposed to talk about that. And Matt Sytak looks at him like, what are you talking about? And he goes, we're not supposed to be talking about that. And then he looked really pissed. And he said, well, you let the cat out of the bag now. You might as well go ahead. So Jordan Bly, don't sleep on Jordan Bly, because obviously they told their PR team, don't talk about this guy. So they're trying to hide him, maybe for the practice squad, obviously. But Jordan Bly, again, is another slot receiver. He's tiny. He's 166. We'll see if he can bulk up a little bit too. But again, like I said, they need to have a backup slot, and we don't know what's going to happen with Wan'Dale after this year. So I wanted to bring in Jordan now because little Jordan Humphrey and Jordan Bly are really sort of the slot guys. So I think Montreal Washington is another guy that, because of his size, is really the slot guy too. We'll talk about the big guys that everyone, I know I can see in chat, everyone's talking about right now, and all of them are interesting. But so we have our top 4. We have our Smith Marset is number 5 or 6, however you want to call it. But
right.
Who's going to be 6 and 7? If there's going to be 7, we don't even know there will be a 7. If they really like Jordan Bly and he continues to make plays throughout the preseason and training camp, Jordan Bly could make the team. Dallin Cambray, who was caught only 10 passes his entire collegiate career, 10 his entire career, not in a season. Everyone thought, what the hell is this? The last OTA, he had 2 deep catches down the field, and even the Giants guys were like, where's this coming from? So I'm not saying that means we should pencil him in, but all of these guys that we're talking about right now, I wouldn't count any of them out. I'm just saying Bryce Ford Wheaton has better start doing stuff. Little Jordan Humphrey is another guy that I haven't heard his name called in OTA so far. So those 2 guys have to start stepping it up if they want to make the team. Yeah, let me put it this way: if you're not going with your guy Zach Pascal, who's the other guy that you're interested in? Is it Wells?
To a degree, yeah, because of the connection to Dart. I actually I still lean towards size. I'm kind of biased that way. So Collins or Felton, I would like to see some size guys there. But I also then I'm curious who might get let go from another team that the Giants might go and snag and bring in as that later guy to add to a group that has some size, and that or whatever they just think it brings. I think if Amir Smith Marset shows, yeah, I know, I saw that, shows enough offensively in camp, that's huge for the Giants, because now you've got a guy.
Who?
Smith Marset, if he
Yes.
shows offensive,
That is
he
huge.
shows stuff.
That is
Because
huge.
that frees up a spot. You've got a legitimate last receiver on your list potentially still being a guy. Now, one thing I want to bring up real quick, you mentioned Calibre there with his total number of receptions. To give you an idea of how crazy that is to think of that he's on this team, even trying to make the team. David Tyree in college had 75 receptions. A guy that was a complete afterthought for the
Right.
Giants was never
I've
going
never
to
heard
be either.
I've never heard of
75.
a receiver being signed by a team that only had 10 receptions. I've never heard of that before. But Cambray is apparently a special teams ace, including things like being a holder. And he was another guy during, again, inside this Giants huddle or whatever is Big Blue Kickoff Live. John Schmelk said, I think it was John Schmelk said, we're not supposed to list all the places he's lined up. So he's another guy that they've been like, shh, don't talk too much about, which I'm surprised they're even saying that because we're listening, Giants. I'm picking up this stuff.
It's still the OTAs though, right? Like, I mean,
I know.
No, I don't mean for you. I mean for them. Okay, calm down. It's not like it was training camp and they're not going to use them in games.
Yeah,
this is
not,
OTAs. I'm like,
and plus,
okay.
if Jordan Bly and Cambray light it up in training camp, it's not a secret. It's everyone's going to see it. They're going to be like, who the hell's number 5? They'll be like, who is that guy? So now, Bo Collins, Felton, and Wells, I put in the same category as like when we signed them, it was like, oh, great free agent signing, great undrafted rookie free agent signing. All of them you could have said could have been a 6th, 7th round draft pick. All of them got size. All of them at one point in their collegiate careers were considered draftable players and guys that were on the radar. They were going into their senior year. People were saying, keep an eye. Cy to the point where Cy said earlier in Wells's career, he had him really high as a potential 2nd or 1st round draft pick. Good. That's what we're talking about. Now, the thing on Wells is he's not a blazer, but he's quick for his size, and he's bounced around with these portals where people can change college, which drives me crazy.
Yeah.
But he went from where he went from James Madison to South Carolina, I think, to ending up playing with our new quarterback, Dart. I think don't sleep on him because he's got a pedigree, and plus he's got a relationship with Dart. Felton, I saw a series of clips on Felton. Man, that guy can block. Felton's not just big, but that guy was one of the people that I followed on Twitter said he was the best blocking wide receiver in college football last year. And I was kind of, when people make statements like that, I'm like, how do you know that? And then I saw the highlight clip this guy put together, and I was like, holy crap, this guy really. Then that doesn't mean he's got to be a receiver in order to make the team.
Right.
But if you can do that kind of thing, that helps. And Bo Collins was of the 3 was the kind of the guy that I sort of put down at the bottom of the 3 until some guy I also follow said Bo Collins was one of the best wide receivers in all of college football getting off of press coverage. That he's he's a nightmare to try to jam at the line of scrimmage. His problem at Notre Dame was drops, but he's another guy.
Catching is very important.
Yes, he's another guy with size, and if you can get off press coverage with size as an outside receiver, that's a huge advantage. And he had a really good week last week in OTAs. He stood out in OTAs last week. So people are going to say OTAs, it doesn't matter. You're right. This all doesn't matter. But it's a lot better than saying, man, none of these guys were doing anything in OTAs. So the guys that have made noise that have caught my attention because of the noise that they made: Cambray, Bly, Collins, Felton, Wells. The only time I heard Zach Pascal's that first Jameis Winston interception bounced off of Pascal's hands and was returned the other way. Amir Smith-Marset is surprisingly been very, very noticeable. Montreal Washington actually, I think, had a decent week this week. I haven't heard anything from little Jordan Humphrey and nothing on Bryce Ford Wheaton. So long story short, I think we know who our top 4 are going to be. I think we know that Amir Smith-Marset is going to make the team. And the question is now, who's number 6 and do they carry a number 7? And again, when people say, well, that sucks, just remember 3 of these guys are probably going to be in the practice squad.
I like that. That's a good point. Oh
yeah, I mean, and again, no doubt. But there's also
that's all we got to go on.
There's also the Victor Cruzes of the world too. So let's not.
So I will say this too. Keep an eye on at the end of camp. If out of nowhere one of the young guys ends up on IR and there was no thought of any major thing to happen, it's the Giants really like him, don't think he's ready this year, and aren't going to risk him sitting on the practice squad where he could get taken by somebody else. So that's happened before. That if they like somebody, so like when you look at Bly, the one thing about Bly is he's really small. He's tall. He is thin.
He needs a year in the weight room.
That would be a bad combination of 6 feet and 166 pounds. I'm like, I mean, I'd like to be 166 pounds. That so for a wide receiver, not so good. I think one of the things too to kind of look at, and you've talked about it ad nauseum. Really, you've mentioned it multiple times. Cam Scatabo is a really good receiver, and if the Giants use their running backs out in patterns a lot, then there might not be spaces for other guys. They might not go 4 wide on the field at the same time. They're keeping a back who's going to go out into the pass pattern. We're going to have probably 4 tight ends. And a couple of them are going to be Theo Johnson's a receiving tight end who's big enough to block. Bellinger, we don't know about what the deal is with him. Mm-hmm. We don't know if Dulcich is going to make the team, but he is a receiving tight end. Fedoni is a guy who can definitely be a receiving tight end over the middle. These are guys that the Giants are going to have multiple people throw to. They might not need 7 receivers deep. Their 6 could be it.
Correct.
And so some of these guys, they might really only be playing for the practice squad or to bump somebody else. If Hyatt struggles, by the way, and we don't know that he won't yet, he hasn't proven anything. If Hyatt struggles, he's out. And then what happens? Now you got to move people around. And then who's going to stay? So it is up for grabs. And you know, Pascal, for me, I picked him. But now that I think about it a little bit too, my concern is his age, comparatively speaking, that if the Giants really want, they can go younger and control the cost even more by going younger than Pascal. Even vet minimum for Pascal is more than the rookies.
Remember, you can put old guys on the practice squad now too. So
true. That's also true.
You know, we were talking about, I mean, he's not an old guy, but I was saying, I think the Giants will carry 3 running backs. Oh, I would, and put Eric Gray on the practice squad. Because I don't think they need to. I will be very surprised, however, if they don't carry 4 tight ends this year. And I will be very surprised if they don't carry 3 quarterbacks. I think it's a given they're going to carry 3 quarterbacks.
Sure.
So they've got 7 wide receivers is a lot. And Tyrone Tracy played wide receiver. Again, another guy who's got to cut down on the drops, but he played wide receiver. Scatabo plays the position like have you seen his highlights? He catches like a wide receiver.
He's got receiver
swing passes. In one of the playoff games on the line, they spread him out, had him run down the field on a fly route, and he was covered, and he caught the ball in the biggest of situations. I forget what it was, 3rd and long or 4th and long, and it was like, holy crap. And he does that. I mean, he has wide receiver like hands, and he'll make the catch and contact. So I think, and this gets back to earlier question I think Trainmaster had about what you just talked about. They'll probably, because of the running backs, they could probably go with six wide receivers too. So
we'll
see that. So again, don't forget the practice squad. Don't discount the practice squad. John brought up a good point that if somebody's really good and they try to get away from this, because in the old days, in the 80s and 90s, teams used to do this all the time. They used to stash people on IR with fake injuries, and the Redskins were infamous for doing that. And because of the Redskins, they had to change the rules. The problem with that is once you do that, the player can't practice anymore. He can't be doing anything with the team. So you prefer not to do that. Plus, it's illegal is the wrong word, but it's illegal to do that. So I don't know how they police that anymore, but then you're not supposed to do that. So I think we got a ton of questions, and we also have questions in the forum too to bring up. So I'd like to unless you want to finish up. So I think we've covered the wide receivers. I think it's Gabe Davis. One last thing. The Gabe Davis.
Sure.
John and I talked about Gabe Davis in our last show on the OTA review. We came to the conclusion that if Giants sign Gabe Davis, it's a really bad sign for Jalen Hyatt. That doesn't mean they won't do it, but Gabe Davis and Jalen Hyatt basically seem to us to be sort of like the same type of player. And I don't think it's a good sign for Jalen. And I think John said the same thing. I don't think it's a good. That doesn't mean they won't do it, but that's what our view is. And I don't think he's healthy right now. He's making the rounds. Everyone's checking out his knee. He'll be healthy at some point, and that may work to the Giants' advantage right now because they might want to see how Jalen Hyatt does early in training camp. And if he's having problems, because now they can hit, now they can jam. And if Jalen's having problems, then you could say, you know what, we're going to bring in Gabe Davis. I mean, that's my view on this.
I totally agree. I don't think you can overstate it. If they sign Gabe Davis, there really is not a path for Jalen Hyatt. He doesn't play special teams. He's not going to be covering anything. He's not returning kicks. So that pretty much takes him out of anything. If the one position, which is him running deep, is now being filled by another guy who can run deep, but doesn't do a lot of other stuff either, and he's not going to play special teams either.
What does he bring to the table at that point?
So basically, you're just one guy. They're the same guy. So if you bring in a guy like that, it's because you don't like the guy you got, and that's really, to me, it's a really bad sign. Now, if they go get somebody completely different, right. So let's say, because I've seen it all over X, let's say Chris Olave is available and from the Saints, and if the Giants want a legit, I want another receiver on the other side, minus the concussion stuff, Olave is a legitimate second receiver.
Olave would take Slayton's job, not in terms of getting him off the roster. Correct. But Olave would probably knock Slayton out of the starting lineup.
Slayton would be 4, and you would go from there. I don't think you bring in a Gabe Davis, though, for anything other than he's to replace Jalen Hyatt. That's the only reason you would bring him in.
Right? I mean, that's how they're the same type of player, right? That's how I see it. So I don't think it's impossible to happen. And I think why are we talking about Naked Gun?
He's giving you shit because you shit on it, the trailer in the site today.
I love the Naked Gun series. That new movie looks like shit, but that's me. But anyway,
I've got my concerns, but I'm holding out hope.
I'm a big Leslie Nielsen fan. I think there's some movies you don't remake, and not that it's a classic. Like you don't remake Psycho if you want to talk about classics. You don't remake Naked Gun. That's a movie that did not need to be remade. I'm sorry, but anyways, but
it's not technically being remade. It's a sequel.
Whatever. I mean, come on, get some new ideas.
He's the son. No, I get it.
Jesus Christ! It's like
I know.
All they do now is make
I know you hate it. You hate that there's no original ideas. I know.
All right. So, yeah. So I think we're done with. Let's do questions. And just talk about anything. But unless there's something we missed in chat on the we'll get to that in the questions.
No, I think we pretty much. I mean, we've been throwing things up as they go. And obviously, I wanted to give a shout out to our super chat from across the pond. He's been awesome with us. They've got a big rugby match coming up. July 4th, I believe he said it was like 6:30 in the morning. Tutu, you can put it in here and let people know, but I'll remind folks as we get closer again, so we could check that out as well. And he's getting caught up with his boys from college from Princeton there. So anyway, yes. So you had some questions in the site. I think we probably could start with those.
Yeah, there's a series of questions from Angel Eyes. Just real quick, as far as wide receiver skill sets, should the Giants get contested catch specialist or a slot receiver in free agency in the draft next year? There's 2 more quick questions, but let's address that one first. I just want them to get a good player. So if they go in the next look, if we come out of this season and Nabers is doing it all again, and nobody seems to be helping him, it's time to let Wan'Dale go. It's time to move on from Slayton. And I don't care if you get it. You probably have to get a slot and an outside receiver at that point. But if Wan'Dale does really well and Slayton doesn't, then you focus on the outside receiver. So it really depends on what Slayton and Wan'Dale and Hyatt. I mean, if Hyatt has If Hyatt's not going to get a ton of touches because he's the fourth receiver. People are going to have to remember that too. If we get into the regular season and people are like at the end of the game, the Giants win, we won 24-17 and we threw for 300 yards and people are going, why did Hyatt only get one catch? Well, he's the fourth wide receiver. Now it sounds like I'm making excuses for him. I'm not. I'm saying if you're the fourth wide receiver on the team, you're probably not getting that many chances, especially if you got Malik Nabers on the team. So the Giants have got those wide receivers, they've got the tight ends they've got, and now they've got the running backs. You want to spread the ball around. So my answer, John, to that question is it depends on who does what. I think the interesting question here, you and I have talked about this before. If you get a receiver next year, if it's you, John, you're
Sure.
Joe Shane. You're Joe Shane. You have Malik Nabers. Do you want a big outside receiver, contested catch guy, may not get separation, but gets the 50-50 balls? Or do you want another guy who separates and may not be the biggest guy? Or does it matter? You just want the best guy?
Okay. Two things real quick. The first one I'm going to say is if I'm Joe Shane, my son better not post the guy that I'm going to draft before we're going to draft him.
Or you're going to spank him.
Yeah. Well, a little too old for that, but and again, this is public. He would be talked to very sternly.
Yes.
I want to get kind of old school. Nabers is our Michael Irvin. Then I want my Alvin Harper. I want a guy that is maybe going to get 50 receptions during the year, but 25 of them are going to be for 40 yards or more. I want a guy that's going down the field, is going to blow it up and make that guy better. The problem that I have with that question is that I started to think about it as you were talking. If you take Slayton out of the equation as well, he's got a contract, but again, he is who he is. We could potentially be needing 3 of our top 4 receiving positions replaced next year.
3.
Wan'Dale could be going.
Right.
Hyatt's number 4. Hyatt
might not. But I don't worry about that.
And then Slayton's the third one.
Yeah.
And Slayton's the third one. He's under contract, but he's just a guy. The only real guy that you 100% right now know
you're correct.
is Nabers.
I think somebody on the roster right now that's a rookie is going to surprise us. I hope it's not what you're talking about.
Well, that's making the team. Yeah. But I mean, again, we're talking about if we're going to go to the next level, you've got to have really good players. So what I'm hoping for is that, again, I'm hoping Wan'Dale is the guy we thought he was when we drafted him with a better quarterback. Right. I'm hoping that Jalen Hyatt can replace Slayton. That's really ultimately not necessarily for this year, but going forward, that you go, you know what, he did enough, we see enough, he can be Slayton. And then you draft somebody else to come in and be a legit number 2 on the other side. But right now I'm concerned that we might only have one receiver next year when this season's over.
Right. Well, the way I look at this too is this. All right, so because of the draft simulators, when you look at the wide receivers that are going to be next year's draft, it's who's on the board at the time when you pick.
True.
Too. There are some really good wide receivers that are big, and there's some really good wide receivers that are not so big, but they're better at quickness and speed and that kind of thing. So some of that's taken out of your hands. So I've done these simulations for 2026, which is way too early. I get it, because people are going to go going up and down, and there'll be players that are good now or considered good that are not going to be good, and vice versa. But it does get you into the mindset of a GM when you're like you're looking for a wide receiver, say in round 2, and you're like, well, that's the only guy that's available that's any good. Then that your decision's kind of made for you at that point too. And a lot of it gets back to what John just said. If Wan'Dale's really good and they re-sign him, we don't need a slot receiver. If Slayton has a really good year, then maybe we don't have to go out and draft another wide receiver. It doesn't mean we don't address the position. Doesn't mean we don't bring other people in. It just depends on what's going on. Second question he had was, this is a question that you and I have asked all off season. How much do you anticipate the Giants using a 2-man defensive line they implemented for a few years? That's been the consternation of many on this board. Angel Eyes, I watched a YouTube video this week on someone explaining the different coverages that are prevalent now in the NFL. And what was interesting, they were using Baltimore Raven tape, the all 22 tape they were showing, and the Baltimore Ravens were using a 2-man defensive line. And it got me thinking, how much has this become the norm in the NFL? So we're going to have Carl Banks on this week. I want to ask Carl Banks about this because Carl Banks came from a 3-4 2-gap system in the 80s where you had 3 down defensive linemen, 4 linebackers, the outside linebackers being Lawrence Taylor and Carl Banks. So it was almost like a 5-man front. And now we've gone to sort of like a 4-man front in a 3-4 now, where it's the ends are not Leonard Marshall and George Martin. They're the outside linebackers. And the Ravens were doing the same thing. And I bet you this is a trend that maybe we're not picking up as Giants fans because we saw Wink do it. And we saw Shane Bowen do it, but maybe a lot of teams are doing it now. So that you look at them, and because what caught everyone's attention is when the Giants came out with their depth chart under Wink, they had 2 defensive linemen and 4 linebackers because they showed the nickel. And my issue with John Schmelk when he was on the show was kind of like, well, in the old days when you wanted to do a nickel, you took one of the middle linebackers off the field. Right. And you had the 5th defensive back. Now it seems to be that they've pretty much taken the 3rd defensive lineman off the field. So if I'm the Philadelphia Eagles and I don't want Abdul Carter and Kayvon Thibodeau and Brian Burns pass rushing the crap out of me, I'm going to run the ball on you because I don't want to face you on 3rd and 8. I'm just going to run the ball on you and keep you in 3rd and 1. So that's my fear too. But to address your question, this may be like the new thing. It may be they have a nose tackle and a 3 technique, and the ends are now are linebackers. And I'm not crazy about that, but I'd like someone to explain to me why they think that's going to work. Because as far as the Giants, it hasn't been working to date, and we've got Dexter Lawrence. If you can't make that work with Dexter Lawrence, then you've got a problem. So
when we first
I want someone to explain that to me. I don't know.
When we first put it in, it was under Wink.
Yes.
And who did we have also outside when we went to that lineup?
Leonard Williams, right?
Well, he was one of the 2.
You mean
we went with Jahadi Ward.
Oh,
so
yeah.
You had a 275+ pound guy basically playing stand-up defensive end on that
and
side.
He was a linebacker for
right.
Them. Right.
And
yes.
You had him on that side. But when that guy is Kayvon Thibodeau, he has far less bulk than Jahadi Ward.
Right.
And you're asking him to do stuff that actually takes away from what it is he brings to the table. It's kind of that old thing of and I brought it up many, many times before because it pisses me off even till this day, is you switch to a 4-3 defense and then you draft Clint Sintum to play outside linebacker in a 4-3. The dude was not a 4-3 outside linebacker. You're now asking Kayvon to essentially be a 5 technique defensive end, but as a stand-up outside guy, and you want him to take on the running game with the 2 defensive linemen. It just wasn't working. Teams are dictating to us. I don't know what their plan is, and I can't wait to hear Carl's take on this. But regardless, the Giants are going to have to win early on those downs to then take advantage of those pass rush guys. Yeah. If we don't, those pass rush guys are going to constantly be playing the run and on 2nd and 3rd downs, and it's going to take their effectiveness away completely.
And the wild card in all this is Chauncey Golston. So Chauncey Golston, to me, is not a linebacker. They've given him a linebacker number. They're going to play him at 3 technique defensive tackle and pass rush downs at times. And apparently they can't do too much in OTAs, but Giants employees have been saying, don't sleep on Chauncey. They said it today. I saw a thing today where they were saying, don't sleep on Chauncey. If Chauncey and Dallas played that 5 technique, 4 technique, 4-eye position like Jihad Ward played when the Giants were here. So if they envision him being like Ward, then that's a good sign for us. Of course, that begs the question, how does that fit in with Kayvon and at that point and stuff like that? So, but Chauncey Golston might be a good sign that the Giants have learned their lesson. I don't know. Because part of this, again, it gets into the draft next year. Because if they come out of this year and they're still having trouble defending the run, I don't know if Shane Bowen's going to make it, number one. But number 2, something there's no excuse for them not to be able. It's not a personnel problem anymore. They drafted Darius Alexander. They brought in Chauncey Golston. They brought in Roy Robertson Harris, who's a decent player. He's a huge guy. Dexter Lawrence is the best nose tackle in football, without a doubt. They shouldn't be having these problems. And now they've got all these, elite edge guys, and plus they've got defensive backs who can tackle now. So Newbin and Holland are great run defending safeties, and Banks and Adebo are big corners. They're so big they look like safeties. I don't think people realize they're going to be. Giants fans are going to be pleasantly surprised when they see Paulson Adebo, how big a corner he is. And Tay Banks, for whatever you feel like about him, he's a big physical dude as well too. So if they can't defend the run, it's a schematic problem. And I'd like Carl Banks to explain this to me, because he came from a system where they had three defensive linemen up front, and then they had Lawrence Taylor. And I'm going to show the plays. If you guys join us I'm going to show from the 49er Giants.
We are recording it, so it won't be live. It'll be recorded.
Oh, it'll be recorded.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, you guys will see it, but we're going to show clips of Carl Banks setting the edge. They didn't call it that back then when you were a fan.
Right.
It's funny. Right. No one talked about that, but that's what he's doing, and nobody did it better than Carl Banks. And I'd like him to explain what the hell are the. And it's not just the Giants. Like I said, the Ravens were doing it. So I think it's a league thing.
So for Trainmaster, I can answer that one. So Matthias coming out though, Matthias was a surprise, by the way. The Giants drafted Matthias, and they had a number of other needs, and they went defensive line, but they really made Matthias. They brought him in, and they kind of moved him to be more of a linebacker. He played down every now and then, but he was more of a stand-up guy from time to time. So it was really a weird transitional piece for Matthias, and so. I think they struggled less on finding a spot for him, as much as they were trying to use him differently, because he wasn't a traditional defensive end, but he definitely wasn't an outside linebacker.
Yeah, I had a little bit of a different take. I think they struggled finding a place to put Matthias, because we were so rich at defensive end that they were trying to find a way to get him on the field. I think if Matthias had gone to another team, he would have had a different career. I think he was stuck behind awesome players. And Matthias was a good player, and they were just trying to figure out how. So in a lot of ways, and it sounds like they're doing it, just pray they know how to use Abdul Carter. Because I don't want Abdul Carter to be another Matthias.
But they are massively different players.
Oh yeah, no. But what I'm saying
not even
is
close.
But what I'm saying is they kind of forced Matthias, I think, into a role that he wasn't well suited for. If Justin Tuck wasn't ahead of Matthias would have had a different career, I think.
But Justin, see, again, I don't know if I agree with that.
No.
Matthias wasn't really a traditional defensive end. He wasn't going to beat those other defensive ends out. But the Giants wanted to get him on for this pass rush ability. So they wanted him on the field. So they were using him at linebacker to do some of that stuff, which he had a couple of times. I think he had an interception. He dropped a clear interception. It would have been a touchdown. And he had a sack that he let Vince Young go for some random reason. Yes,
we'll
thank
disagree
you,
on that, because I think he was a defensive end that was playing out of position. I think he was an OC. He was a Justin Tuck. He was a Strahan type of defensive end, but they just couldn't. So they used the NASCAR. They could get him on the field, but when it wasn't third and long, they were like, we don't want him. It's the same thing we've talked about with Abdul Carter and Thibodeau and at different positions, but we don't want somebody in a square head. The advantage is Abdul Carter has played linebacker.
Correct.
So he can do that. I'm not as worried about it. I just hope there was an interesting exchange today on one of the Giants. Again, it was their huddle broadcast or whatever. It was John Schmelk and the guy from Giants Insider was on. And both of them said they had, based on what they've seen in practice, they said, we can't talk about it. They said it, we can't talk about it, but based on what we've seen, we have no concerns whatsoever. And they both said this, we have no concerns whatsoever that the Giants are not going to be able to figure out how to get all three on the field. So I think they've seen, we saw the clip. We saw the clip of that wasn't supposed to get out of all three of them on the field rushing. It sounds like there's more of that too.
And what did that, I know it's OTAs.
Right.
But what did that clip look like? Go back and look at the video that we did on the 84 season and look at the highlight against the Cowboys.
Right.
You've got Andy Hedden was outside. I think that was early in the season, so I think Byron Hunt was on the outside. And
Lawrence acting up the
LT
middle.
was in the middle. Came
Right.
right up the field. I mean, that's the kind of versatility that Carter can bring. The other thing I'll say, going back to Matthias real quick, and not necessarily about Matthias himself, but the situation he was in, you keep bringing up Justin Tuck, and I think that's a good thing to bring up. But Justin Tuck, when we got Justin Tuck, when we got Justin Tuck, I believe when he was drafted, they listed him at 6'4", 245. Justin Tuck was bigger than that. And he ultimately, the Giants, when they would go into those NASCAR packages, Tuck would slide inside. He would become a defensive tackle. Matthias was never going to be that guy. He was always going to have to be on the outside. He was long, he was tall, 6'6", 6'7", but he was angular. So they had to put him on the outside.
Didn't he do both though?
He did not. He did not play in the middle. He was the outside guy.
No, I thought he did both. Okay, I'd have to. They didn't want OC doing that. I know that OC wasn't a guy.
No,
they wanted him coming off the corner.
Right.
I thought.
I'd have to go back and look.
I always
think I'm right, but I
know Tuck was in the middle. I know they would put in the middle. So, all right, let's get to other questions here too. There was one more from Angel Eyes, but let's give some
real quick. I want to just address it. It's separate of defense. It was in the chat about Slayton. The thing was brought up that the Giants signed Slayton because they didn't have confidence in Hyatt. I'm going to disagree slightly. I don't think Slayton's signing had anything to do with Hyatt per se.
No, I don't either.
I actually think the Giants at the time didn't know who their quarterback was going to be, because they signed at that point. I believe they had signed Winston, or they were about to sign Winston, but Wilson still wasn't signed when we re-signed Slayton. I think they knew they weren't signing another free agent wide receiver from somewhere else. There was talk that maybe T. Higgins might be a guy that they could go after, but ultimately he got tagged, so that wasn't going to happen. So they really weren't looking in another direction. They weren't trading. They weren't signing. I think they signed him because they basically know, we can't go and try to find new people at every single position while we're still trying to find a quarterback. And the fact of the matter is, Eric brought it up right in the beginning, I think the Giants have pretty much decided that their biggest woes with even the players that they had was because of one guy, not because of the other.
Right or wrong. Right. That's the decision. There's no way around it. They brought every starter back on offense except the quarterback. So John and I did one of the better shows I think John and I did was our free agents preview. I think you and I nailed
that was fun.
And I'm not historically very good at predicting free agent moves, but I think you and I nailed the free agent preview. We said the offensive players available weren't very good. The ones that were ultimately going to be available, we knew some people were going to get protected, and they did. But you and I had the same reaction. The wide receiver market in free agency was awful. And I said to you at the time, I said, you know what? I thought Slayton was going to, they were going to let Slayton walk. But after I looked at who was available around the entire league, I said to you, I'd bring Slayton back at this point, because
you did.
In terms of age, ability, still potential, because he still has potential. He was the most interesting guy. Now, the only other guy I mentioned as a veteran, sort of because of the ties, and thank God the Giants didn't do it, was Stephon Diggs. And I think talk about boat parties. So what's the pink substance, Diggs?
Yeah.
Anyways,
what's your problem?
Yeah. Anyways, we won't go there. All right. So, but the wide receiver free agent market stunk, and so I think and Slayton made an interesting comment. His first interview back, he said he didn't think he was going to be back too. And I don't know if I don't remember. I'd have to rewatch it. If he meant it, I think he was talking about he didn't think he would be back. Not that just the Giants wouldn't be.
Yeah, I didn't take it that he thought the Giants didn't want him back. I took it like he was like, I didn't think I'd become.
Yeah, that's the way I took it.
Yeah.
Too. So, and then he was excited about the quarterback situation before we had a quarterback. Remember? Because we were like, what does he know? Remember, we were like, what
yeah,
does he
which tells me,
know?
yeah, he knew. They
He
told
knew
him what they were planning to
something.
do.
Yeah. So it was kind of like, you know, and I don't want to go off on a tangent too much, but I guess the guy with Cleveland didn't really know what was going on. Remember, we were trying to figure out the defensive. What's his name? The guy that signed a huge contract with.
Oh yeah, Myles Garrett.
Remember, we were like, well, who? Because he was saying he said, well, I know what's going to happen. We're going to get somebody. It wasn't getting.
Apparently, it's everybody.
We know that. So what was he jacked up about? So, anyways, that's
the Cleveland's idea of getting a quarterback was getting everybody.
Yes,
draft a couple,
It wasn't
Dylan
Gabriel. You know, they were. It wasn't. He wasn't coming on there going, "Oh, we're getting Dylan Gabriel." That wasn't it. So, anyways, all right, you pick the next question.
I'm trying to think. I was looking real quick here. Well, I'll do one that's not really related to anything on the Giants team wise, but Paul wants to know what's the deal with the merchandise.
That's me dropping the ball on this. We're going to do something. We have to revise the logo a little bit because if we keep the NY in the helmet, I'm sure someone's going to hit us with a trademark or copyright violation. So we'll use something similar. We were thinking about maybe doing pints. We have this cool etched. Can't see it right now, but we'll have the logo in it, and when we're thinking about shirts, maybe and mugs and hats and stuff, we'll do something. But we've got to slightly revise the artwork, and we'll do something. So, in the works. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
It's in the works.
Yeah.
And then on the last question, we have a ton of questions here, but the last question we had on the site was for linemen, both sides of the ball. What's more important between agility, power, or arm length? And on a related note, which way do you think Marcus Bowe will project between tackle and interior offensive lineman? That seems to be a favorite thing. Well, first part of that is, again, and this is going to sound like a cop-out, all of those things are important. So I think arm length has become, I think people gotten a little too obsessed with arm length, but it's clearly important. But we learned from Evan Neal, you better be able to have some agility, and I'd be a little bit more worried. Let me give you a perfect example again, because Dave Del Cole's out there. The Alabama lineman that's coming out, is it Proctor? Caden Proctor? He's 360 pounds. A ton of people have him as a top 5 draft pick. I wouldn't touch him.
I don't want an Alabama guy.
He's almost too big. And Evan Neal has scared me with that. And there are people, you know what, a couple of reports I've seen on him, questions about his balance. So I'm like, Alabama lineman questions with balance, top 5 pick. I'm not touching him. So old days, you talk to me, I would always say power, but I'm not so sure anymore in today's NFL. Given what the Giants do on offense too, we're not a power running team. So that would be I don't know if you have a different answer on that.
The only thing that I think of now, arm length is great, but if you have long arms and not a lot of strength, I don't care how long the arms you are, they get pushed back into your body. It doesn't matter. Too short is a problem. Like if you're constantly having to so you're leaning over your feet to try to reach guys. So it's all about, if you're, put it this way, if you're a shorter arm guy, I hope you have a background in wrestling, because I think you'll be better able to, in close quarters, use your hands properly, get yourself where you need to go. If you're a longer arm guy, I want you to have some sort of basketball background a little bit. I want you to be able to fluidly move with your legs and keep your hands where they need to be.
Right.
But if you're just long armed and you lack the foot speed to move where you need to, you're not stopping anybody. You're not even directing them as they go by. So I think it gets overblown on both ends of the equation. Right. I think it's really the makeup. But if I have a player lacking in a physical trait, then I really want them to be a guy who's an overachiever in many aspects. I want them to have that extra tenacity. I want them to be a guy that things didn't get handed to them, that they really had to work to get there. Because I think they overcome their lack of whatever that piece is. If you're physically gifted, but you're lacking some physical traits for the NFL at a lower level of college, you can get by with that because your competition's not that great. Right. When you go up in competition, then you get exposed. So so it really depends.
And length has become very important on the defensive side of the ball. across the board. I've noticed this. It's interesting. You go back a number of years, and maybe Dave Del Cole disagree with me because he focuses on the draft much more than I do. But I didn't really hear arm length being obsessed about that much until it's always been talked about, but
Sure.
it seems to be really, and they talk about length now, defensive edge setters now a lot, not just height. I mean, I talk length, I'm talking about wingspan. You even see about outside corners now. They don't want just tall guys. They want guys that are hard to throw over with the length in their arms. So I don't want to minimize it, but what John said too is, like, I'll give you another example. There are 2 offensive tackles coming out of Utah this year that are both awesome. One's a right tackle and one's a left tackle. Everybody who's watched these guys play say they're awesome, but they say, oh, we have to check on their arm length, and they might have to kick inside if the arm length isn't there. And I'm still thinking, like, all right, if you're a good player, it's the same thing with Marcus Bowe. We're going to find out. And that was the second part of the question. They're going to try him out at tackle. And part of the reason I think they're going to try him at tackle first is I think in the back of their mind, they're protecting themselves against Illuminor leaving in free agency next year. So I think they want to get some protection there. And then also Marcus isn't a big bulked up guy. And sometimes now in the NFL, you want your bigger guys. And this is why Evan Neal actually might work out at guard. Sometimes you want your big physical guys inside, especially in the NFC East. And you want your more nimbler guys on the outside, especially if you run a lot of zone running plays and things like that. I'd love to know what kind of running game we're going to have, because that will tell us a lot about where people will line up. But my guess is Marcus Bowe is going to be a backup tackle for us this year. Where is he going to ultimately be? That's going to be based on how he does a tackle, I think. If he does really well at tackle, why would you move him?
Right. And I think a lot of it too, and we want to be cognizant of the amount of time.
Yes, I'm sorry.
One of the things you got to consider too is, like, the totality of the team can tend to affect all areas of the team, and we get focused on some of the bad parts of this or that, and so we're trying to improve it. And in reality, everything else played a contributing factor to where you were. So we keep saying, well, the Giants' offensive line has been shit, and that's why they haven't. Is it that the only reason? Or has the quarterback play been so bad that the offensive line has been exposed because teams aren't afraid of anything and they were just coming at you kitchen sink? Okay, maybe that's true. Was the quarterback play so bad by itself? Or was it also the fact that the Giants receivers, like 22, 21, 20, we overpaid for a Kenny Golladay that clearly was, I mean, if he was a heart monitor, he'd be a flat line. You clearly, everything affects everything else. So we don't really know, because look at the 88 Giants that go back a ways. But that offensive line, they played around with it multiple times throughout the year. It was a 5th round guy in Doug Riesenberg who becomes the right tackle. It's a 2nd round draft pick who many thought could only be a right tackle. And after his first game against the Cowboys, thought, God, this guy can't play tackle. Ends up being your starting Pro Bowl left tackle. Your number 1 draft pick, your 1st round draft pick, not number 1 because he was the 2nd pick, their 1st round draft pick in 84 at offensive tackle, William Roberts, bounced around, couldn't play tackle, was constantly giving up sacks. They moved him to guard. He was a backup, ultimately moves in at left guard, and the two of them form a unit. But it was also, let's keep in mind, the running game that they had, the tight ends that they had, the receivers that they had, the game plan that they put together maximized their ability. I think the Giants, and you brought it up a number, not recently, but in some things that we've talked about, where they're constantly chasing, right? Every year they look and they go, we need to fix this. So they go after that.
They're reacting.
They go after that one thing, but that one thing is affected by everything else. And when you didn't really, it's kind of like you're constantly changing out windows and you're changing out faucets, but the foundation of your house sucks.
This all started when they chased with Barkley. They thought if they had given Manning another
right.
You know, and we ever since then we've been chasing and trying to plug holes. It's been constant like that.
Then fix the offensive line. Just put Nate Solder out there, and we'll get something. We'll spend a lot of money on him. And
on Nate Solder. Yeah, oh my God,
Nate Solder is the Kenny Galladay of offensive linemen.
We made him the highest paid offensive lineman. He'd never been to a Pro Bowl, and I remember everyone was excited about it. I'm like, what?
And he was on the
Why are we
downside.
so excited about Nate Soldier? Anyways, and it was worse than he was, way worse than he was in New England. But yeah, we should probably wrap this up. I'm actually having such a good time. I didn't realize we were on so long, so we could do this again at some point. But yeah, no, this
So
was a good talk.
if you have any other questions, because we could just basically take it for 6 more minutes. We'll wrap it fully up.
Oh, you want to hit the 2-hour mark
Well,
again?
we don't have to. I'm just
You
wondering.
realize when people are on YouTube and they see 2 hours, they go, "I'm not watching anything that's 2 hours long." Are you nuts?
Well, they did, because we just did the OTA one, and that got 2,100 views. So
let me just look real quick to see. That a lot of people are bailing now anyway. So did we miss anything? A lot of good comments here. I think we probably missed stuff though. Stuff on the defensive line. I think we can wrap it up.
So we have Banks coming up, which we're going to record and release. I'll release it that night once we're done. But barring anything unforeseen, it was supposed to be Tuesday. They got pushed back, not on our side, and so we moved it back to Wednesday. Eric's, I don't know, you've mentioned or not mentioned, but you've got some stuff coming up that's going to we're going to play it.
I'm going on IR. Yep, I'm having surgery, so
we'll play by each of us now. I've had surgery. We're good. So we'll play it by ear, but we'll try to do some stuff after that. And then I'm actually going to be in Vermont for the week after that, but I'm bringing my laptop, so I'm going to try to do it from Vermont on my laptop. But we should be good. And then we start getting into July. We've got some stuff coming. We got some people that we're trying to figure out to get on, but then it's going to be camp, and then I'm looking forward to when we get to real stuff again.
We got tomorrow, Tuesday, is the first of 2 days of mini camp. So we got mini camp Tuesday and Wednesday, and then everybody's gone until training camp. So just everyone pray no injuries on Tuesday and Wednesday, and then everyone doesn't do anything stupid over the summer, and then we get in the training camp healthy. So far so good. Everybody's been, knock on wood, right here. I'm doing it. Everyone's been pretty healthy.
So with that, I'm going to ask. I don't normally do this, and I've been watching some other people, and they constantly do it. They do it in their own chats afterwards and all this stuff, and I don't do it. But if you could, we had over 2,100 views of the video over the weekend, but our subscribers are only 1,300, which means we're actually getting more views than we have subscribers. Most people have a lot of subscribers, and then their views come in less than that, but depending on how many, there's still a lot of views. We're getting more views than we have subscribers. So if you haven't subscribed, it's not like you're going to get, we're not sending you stuff and any of that good stuff. It just it helps us with YouTube. I want to thank the folks. Our Tuto from Italy has been a super chat guy. That's been really helpful. This actually does cost money. I mean, we do spend money on doing it. It's kind of fun, but we want this to be a lot more. So if you could just make sure you like, comment, all that good stuff. I really appreciated it to help. And we're gonna keep going. And pretty soon, a couple weeks from now, once Eric's off the IR, we're going to do another Pour 4 Wednesday. I think we've mentioned it. I've reached out to those guys. We'll probably have the Two Giant Goofballs, so that's their show on. And Eric, did you want to plug the other show? I know they may still be going, but either way, you can still watch it.
What show?
The New York Rush folks. Do you want to drop that in there?
Oh yeah, well, New York Rush guys have been doing an awesome job, like plugging us on Twitter, and I just want to encourage people to visit their website. I mean, their YouTube channel and watch their content too. So I mean, they've been doing awesome, and I've got to do a better job of retweeting their stuff and liking their stuff, and so they've been really good for us. I mean, I think we've got a good symbiotic relationship with them.
Agreed.
So
agreed.
That's awesome.
All right. Well, with that, I think we'll call it a close. We pulled down another 2 hours every time we say we're going to keep it tight. Yeah. We don't.
And we don't. All right.
So appreciate it. And we'll see you guys on Wednesday with Carl Banks. Everybody have a good night.